Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. Hello, my name is Jasmin Grant, and I'm the Associate Director of Development at FIU Law. Thank you so much for being here today. We are excited about this opportunity to lean in and discuss issues that impact women in the legal industry. But before I introduce our phenomenal panel, I'd like to introduce Dean Page so he can say a few words. Dean Page, go ahead.
Thank you, Jasmin. So welcome to this FIU Law Alumni Series on women in the legal profession or legal industry. Thank you very much for being here. I also thought I would just take a moment to talk about some of the great things that are going on at FIU and FIU Law at the moment, and I'll keep it really, really short. You may have seen earlier this week, the Mackenzie Scott announced a series of gifts. FIU has received $40 million, and all we have to do is report back in 3 years on how we spent it. And I will be asking on behalf of the law school for funding for first-generation scholarships and additional funding related to access-oriented programming. In addition, actually, I'm not even sure if this is public yet, but in any case, Florida released its performance-based funding metrics for the state university system this year. I am delighted to report that FIU received 97 points out of a possible 100. That puts them #1 in the state, and it's the highest number of points any university in the system has ever received. So it's fantastic for FIU as a whole. And, the reality is they are probably going to change the metric somewhat to benefit some other universities. But in any case, at the moment, highest ever and #1 for FIU. For FIU Law particularly, you probably already know how we're top in the state for bar passage. You may know we have one of the best employment rates for our graduates. Although that said, I'm always looking for more jobs and more opportunities for our graduates. Starting in August, we will be, I'm confident predicting, we will recruit our strongest ever class this fall. Also, and I find this incredibly exciting, we've received tentative approval to really improve our environmental law offerings. And we've received tentative approval to hire as many as 5 professors in this area over the next couple of years. And that's because, well, climate change and the environment is extraordinarily important to the South Florida area. With respect to this panel, I'm particularly grateful to our panelists for appearing. They are fantastic, so thank you very much. I know you're all really busy, but frankly, you're illustrative of the great sort of cross-section of what our alumni have achieved and are able to achieve. So thank you so much. It's obviously really important, as you probably, or as you may know, women only became a majority of law students about 3 or 4 years ago. This year, they represent 55% of law students. But in the overall practice of law, women make up roughly a third, a little over a third in terms of lawyers. So there's still a very long way to go there. So I'm really looking forward to the insight that I know our panelists are going to provide. And I'd also like to thank Jasmin, both for moderating and putting this event together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Page. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to begin with introductions. I'll start with Gia. Gia Abreu O'Connor leads the Miami office of RMO LLP, which she helped launch. Gia's practice focuses on representing beneficiaries and fiduciaries, such as administrators, personal representatives, trustees, conservators, and guardians, and contests trust, estate, and guardianship litigation, as well as related estate and guardianship administration issues. Gia also has handled guardianship administration issues, commercial and business disputes, real estate transactions, and disputes and appeals. Gia grew up in Puerto Rico and is a double Panther. She graduated from FIU Law in 2011 and holds a BA in International Relations. During law school, Gia served as Dean's Fellow to the Assistant Dean of Development, Graduate Assistant to Dr. Stanley Fish, and interned with Probate Division of the 11th Judicial Circuit. in Miami. Gia has taught at FIU Law and currently serves as director of the Miami-Dade, Florida Association for Women Lawyers. Welcome, Gia. Then I'll head to Sheila Oretsky. Sheila Oretsky is a shareholder in the Miami office of Buchanan, Ingersoll, and Rooney. She is a trial lawyer who focuses her practice on high-stakes, complex commercial litigation matters that span a variety of industries and include contract fraud, non-compete, trade secret, and partnership disputes. She is routinely retained to identify unique issues in litigation that are often overlooked by other attorneys. She also handles appeals and is the co-chair of Buchanan's Class Action Litigation Practice Group. Sheila graduated from FIU Law in 2005, our inaugural class, and holds a bachelor's and master's from the University of Florida. She is a member of a number of boards in Miami and the proud mother of 2 daughters, aged 4 and 7. Then we have Kristin Drecktrah Paz. She is the partner in the Miami office of Schutz & Bowen, a Florida firm founded in 1910, where she is a member of the International Arbitration and Litigation Practice. Kristin specializes in international and complex dispute resolution, including commercial arbitration, investment arbitration, and international litigation. She has counseled private parties in investment arbitration proceedings and litigation against foreign governments in US courts. In addition to international commercial arbitration proceedings under diverse arbitral rules, her litigation experience includes petitions for the US discovery related to foreign proceedings, arbitration-related litigation, recognition and enforcement of foreign judgments and orders, disputes in energy, national resources, construction, healthcare, financial services, and technology sectors, and litigation, business litigation. Kristin is licensed to practice law in Florida and is a board-certified international litigation and arbitration by the Florida Bar. Kristin graduated from FIU Law in 2011 and holds a BA in Spanish and Portuguese Studies from the University of Minnesota. Welcome, Kristin. And last but not least, we have Charlyn Stanberry. Charlyn is the Vice President of Government Relations at the National Association of Broadcasters, NAB. She joined NAB after serving as Chief of Staff for Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, New York District 9, for whom she previously served as a legislative director and counsel. She is also an adjunct professor at the University of the District of Columbia, where she teaches foundation civics and ethics and values. Charlyn also served as Vice President of Executive Affairs for Net Communications, Council for the Multicultural Media, Telecom, and Internet Council, and as a professional staff member for the Congressional Black Caucus. She also served as Regional Voter Protection Director in the 2016 Hillary for America campaign. Charlyn is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and serves in leadership capacities for several philanthropic organizations, including Junior League of Washington and the Washington Bar Association Educational Foundation and GWAC Foundation. Charlyn graduated from FIU Law in 2013 and holds a BSBA and MPA from the University of Central Florida. Welcome, ladies. And now we will begin our discussion. So I'm going to start with Sheila. In this time, we are excited to dive in. And before I get started, if anyone has any questions, feel free to submit them in the Q&A box. As many companies are now focused on ways to improve their diversity and inclusion efforts, this is the perfect time for us to discuss ways to advance women in the legal profession. So the first question, Sheila, I'm going to direct this to you. What are common misconceptions people have about women in the legal profession? And how can we combat these misconceptions and communicate more effectively?
Sure. So I think a lot of times women are people in the profession think that female lawyers have other responsibilities or obligations more so than their male counterparts in the profession. What that doesn't take into account for is that times have really changed. I can tell you from my own personal experience that I have a very hands-on husband who does more than his 50% share that he's expected to do. And I think that that has really evolved over the past number of years. I often think about something that Justice Ginsburg said when they asked her, what is the key to a successful marriage? And she said support, right? So as we grow in our lives and in these careers, we need to, I think, focus on the fact that the people that we surround ourselves with have to be supportive. Our partners, our colleagues, the staff that helps us every day, our villages at home, if we're parents. So I think that misconception that women have, more of a responsibility in their homes is one that is really it's really changing. It's changing a lot, and it's not as much of an issue as it used to be in the past.
I totally agree. And it's great to have a supportive husband.
Yes, it is. It makes a world of difference.
Yeah. And Charlyn, do you want to take this one next?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Sheila mentioned. Having a support system in a village is key. I think that a lot of people may have misconceptions about women just being able to do everything and be the superwoman and not necessarily get acknowledgement in regards to that. And sometimes we are superwomen, don't get us wrong, but we are regular human beings and we do have to take care of ourselves.
And Gia, do you have anything to add? I think taking care of ourselves is a big one.
That is a big one. I think the work-life balance tends to be a little harder sometimes when you're a woman. I don't have any kids, but I know some of the women here do have children, and it tends to, everybody tells me you figure it out, it falls in its place, and you kind of see things progress and figure out what works and what doesn't. But the self-care is really important. Taking a little time every week to care for yourself is huge. Taking a little time to yourself is so important. But one of the misconceptions, I think, is that women can't bring everything 100% to the table at work when they have families at home, and that's not true. We're multitaskers. We figure it out. We make everything happen somehow. We are the super women. So I think that's changed more recently, as Sheila mentioned, but it's still something that some people battle.
I agree. And Kristin, did you have anything to add?
Sure, of course. One of my thoughts that came to mind was that one of the common misconceptions, and I believe this is changing and has changed a lot, but there's still this old mentality that women aren't as good with clients, or they can't be rainmakers, or they can't bring in business, or they cannot relate to the clients. And that's just patently false now. Really, first of all, companies have changed the makeup of companies. It's not just a bunch of, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to insult anyone, but it's not just a bunch of middle-aged white men anymore at the head of companies. So as we evolve, I think that, the way in which women can bring something to the table and relate to clients has changed too. And gender just really doesn't dictate how a lawyer can relate to clients. And so I really think that is something that is eroding and has eroded, but it's still out there.
And I would like to add something to that, actually, Jasmin. Some of what we're seeing is a trend in companies. When we respond to a request for proposal, for example, they are requiring, some of the larger companies, Fortune 500 companies, are requiring that the lawyers that are submitted in the proposal fit a certain quota, right? So there has to be either a first chair or a second chair female attorney. That also goes for, other diverse attorneys, at the law firm. So it's not, to think that we aren't connecting with the lawyers that are, or the clients, I'm sorry, in a way that a male, litigator or lawyer could connect with them. It's not true. Kristin really hit the nail on the head that the makeup of the companies are changing. The general counsels now are often women. When I started off 16 years ago, I rarely had a female client. And I can say that at least half of the GCs that I communicate with on a daily basis now are all women. So, that those requirements that the companies are placing on these firms, it's been very helpful in getting females and other diverse lawyers the experience that they need to really rise up the ranks.
I agree. And that brings me to, it brings us to the topic of obstacles. So can you share some of the obstacles that women face in the legal profession and how can we move past them? Kristin, I'll start with you on this one.
Sure, of course. So I think part of my answer from the last question is sort of on point with this one too. It seems to be, now, as Sheila was saying, the makeup of companies and the requirements that women be involved and that there be diverse teams working on matters, at least in private practice when we're dealing with large companies. That has shifted a lot. It has removed some of the obstacles for some about the women in the legal profession. But, in general, sometimes in law firms, we still face obstacles. Sheila may have a different take, especially with the Miami office of Buchanan, because that is a complete women power. But oftentimes the equity partners and the ones that are at the top are still men and not, there's not as much of a representation of, let's say, and I'm looking at the private law firm setting right now, there is an underrepresentation of women and diverse lawyers in the upper ranks of these big law firms. So how do we remove them? We keep working hard, we keep excelling, and we, I know so many incredibly successful women partners that are kind of turning that on its face too. So, I mean, other than doing what we're doing and continue to advocate for our position, I think that really helps.
Right. I think advocating for your positions is definitely a good one, which brings me to Sheila. Do you want to speak on this? Working in an all female-driven firm?
Sure. Yeah. So we are. It's pretty unheard of, actually, but especially in a city like a big city like Miami, to have a majority female shareholder office in of a national law firm. So we're very proud of that. I believe there are only 2 or 3 male shareholders in our office now, and many more women. Women at Buchanan nationally hold leadership positions at the firm. They are the managing partners. We are the recipient of the Mansfield Certificate 3.0 plus. If nobody knows what that is, Google it. I had to learn about it myself, but it's a pretty great honor. It asks the firms to commit to place a certain amount of women on executive committees, on the boards of the firms, to make a certain amount full equity shareholders within the firms, and we've accomplished that for the past 3 years, and then some. So it's been the firm is committed to that, and what makes me really proud is the fact that despite being a majority female shareholder office, we are always top 5 producing. So there is this misconception that women don't generate business the way that men do. And that is just not the case. One of the things that we've learned is that juries trust women more than men. It's just a reality. There's a McKinsey, report on this. There's other studies that have been done on this. So while there are implicit biases, in this profession, and when you talk about obstacles, I think that is one of them, right? What does a typical trial lawyer look like, right? It may not look like, somebody who's barely 5'2" and, doesn't have that presence or that stature physically, right? But there's so much more to presence than just that. And so, I would say that is all. Those obstacles are, they're not as harsh as they were in the past, again, because of the decision makers who are hiring lawyers now. They understand and value the importance of having a diverse legal team. So things are really, I think we should celebrate the fact that things are changing. And I think our office, specifically our Buchanan office here in Miami is really representative of that.
And you guys should be very proud for helping move that needle a little bit. And so, Charlyn, do you want to talk about that a little bit and obstacles maybe in your world?
Yeah, I think that, so I'm a part of a trade association where we represent local radio and TV broadcasters, and women only own 6% of the national radio and TV broadcast stations that we have. So when it comes to being underrepresented, especially at these decision-making tables, I think that is one obstacle, right? It's not that many of us that are making the decisions, and that's where I come in, and my counterparts that are women on our government relations team, to make sure we're advocating for policies to bring more women to the table. One thing that I want to kind of bring up, and I remember this was always a challenge for me when I was a new law student and a baby lawyer, is imposter syndrome, and just trying to figure out like, what type of lawyer am I going to be? In my instance, what type of lawyer lobbyist? I know that sometimes we feel like we have to fit a particular mold of, we see this person and they're rude and they just get things done and people respect them. But finding out like, who are you? How can you be authentically you and also be professional? Because that's the number one key when it comes to being a lawyer, and be yourself and create your own brand. And one thing I just kind of want to let everyone know is we're constantly changing, especially as women. We're not only lawyers, in addition, we're a mother. In my instance, I'm a godmother. We're still a daughter. We're a cousin. We're a caretaker. So that's going to come as you get within the profession, but figure out, how can you be authentically you and not have imposter syndrome where you're looking at a person saying you have to fit that exact mold, but always be professional.
That's a good one, Charlyn. Thank you for that. Gia, did you have anything to add before we move to the next question?
Sure. One thing that was an obstacle for me, and it kind of goes hand in hand with that imposter syndrome, is when I started practicing, I do probate, and it's a very small probate bar here in Miami. Majority of the practitioners were older men, and there were just a few women who did what I did, and maybe 2 young women, a very small amount of young men too, but it was so hard to break into that world and really get the credibility as a young lawyer and somebody who didn't look like they were old enough to be a lawyer. And I got told that last week still, oh, you don't look old enough to be a lawyer. So the ageism is definitely something that was an obstacle. The baby face was an obstacle. The imposter syndrome, an internal obstacle where you're thinking, are these people going to believe me? Are they going to hire me and think that I can do my job? And once you start working, and really the only way to combat that imposter syndrome is preparation and making sure that you bring 110% every single time. And I'm a notorious over preparer. I will spend a week preparing for a hearing when other people and the men in my firm, the older men in my firm my old firm would spend maybe a day or two, because I always wanted to bring 110%. And that's the best advice I can give a young me or a young lawyer. Just prepare, make sure that you know what you're talking about, make sure you're always ready to go, because otherwise that's when the imposter syndrome becomes reality. And don't let that that voice of the imposter syndrome take over. Always tell yourself, I can do this, and give yourself that self-talk that brings you to that 110% level of preparation.
Thank you, Gia. Preparation is key. And I think that brings us to this next question that kind of ties everything together. Working in a male-dominated practice can be challenging for most women, especially in the beginning of your career. How have you coped with or addressed gender bias? And how can women insert themselves in a conversation when men are speaking over them? I'll start with you, Gia, on this one.
With me? Okay. So for me, the talking over was always kind of an issue when I started practicing. And it was really not even the talking over, it was the actual getting a seat at the table to talk. When I first started practicing, I was fortunate enough to work with people that were trusting and wanted to give me more responsibility than any first year has at a bigger firm. I was at a smaller firm. So I had that client facing role. I had the ability to develop those skills pretty early on. And really just asking for the opportunities. I would volunteer for things that some people maybe didn't want to do. I would sit down with the client for 2 hours and get all the facts. I would make sure that I put myself in a position where I was available and willing to do certain things so that I was given the opportunity to do other things. And really surrounding myself with people that supported me rather than just held me back. And I've been in a position where I've been told you're not to speak, you're not to say this, you're not to say that. And it's tough. I mean, depending on how comfortable you feel, sometimes you can ask for more, and sometimes you can ask for that opportunity, but really just politely saying, I'm capable, I can handle this, give me the opportunity and let me show you what I can do, was the way that I usually got around that obstacle.
Thank you, Gia. And Charlyn, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so since I've been in DC, a lot of my career has kind of been in the media, tech, and telecom space, which is just what Kristin said, is dominated heavily white male. And Gia mentioned practice. It does take a lot of practice. It takes knowing your worth, knowing that you are meant to be at that table. I had to pick and choose what means that I felt like I needed to just exactly speak up, because I never wanted to be that person where I just say something just to say something. I've always wanted it to be a substance so that I could build my brand as someone, a substance when it comes to these issues. But I think just knowing your worth, practicing, knowing that you're supposed to be at that table and then have something meaningful to add to the discussion. But this is also where having a mentor can come in, because I've had mentors in my life that have kind of taught me about, hey, you're at this table with this person. Here is the subject matter that you speak with them about. Or here is another person. If you mention X, Y, and Z, they're going to be supportive and they're going to help you. Or they may be like, hey, Charlyn, what are you thinking about in this room? What are some ideas that you have for this? So I think mentor can come in with kind of giving you a strategy with learning these type of issues, especially with finding your voice.
Finding your voice takes time, and I think all of us want to have it right away, but it changes, and with age and experience and all of those things. Kristin, did you want to chime in for this one?
Yeah, I think Shar and Gia have some really good points, and it made me think about that whole having a mentor. I think something that at least helped for me, I could say, is just looking for support from men and older men. There are a lot of men in the practice of law who have been mentors or bosses who are supportive. I've been really fortunate to have that, or even people who are not bosses, but being part of different groups and associations and finding those people who will go to bat for you and cheer for you and be helpful and be resources and references. So it's not always about just finding people who are like you to support you or to be a mentor or to be a reference. Let's say it's helpful to have men around who know your worth, because you got to know them through, and it doesn't even have to be through a job. It can, again, from the time I was in law school, I got involved in the international law section of the Florida Bar, just to say one thing. And I've known those people now for over a decade, and a lot of them are, partners in law firms. And now I feel comfortable around them, and I know who I can go to if I need something, or if let's say I were looking for a job, or before I came to Schutz, I spoke with a few people from that organization who I've befriended over the years, and they happen to be, middle-aged to older white men who, or not necessarily white. I didn't mean to say that. They could be of other, they could be diverse, but men who are partners in law firms or have their own firms who know people and who are helpful in that regard.
That's great advice, Kristin. And Sheila, did you have anything? Have you ever experienced gender bias? And I do have a separate question for you as well, because you're at a women-dominated firm. Have you experienced gender bias from other women?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, I think in my experience, I really haven't, in all, candidness, I have not really experienced a lot of gender bias. I can tell you that I started off at a small commercial litigation boutique when I started my practice here in Miami. I was there for 11 years, and we ranged between 9 to, 14 or 15 lawyers at any given time. And for many of those years, I was either the only female attorney or one of two, female attorneys in the firm. One thing that the men that I worked with, my colleagues who, started off as my bosses and then later on became my partners, because I did make partner at the firm, did that I thought was very helpful in my development was, they gave me immediate access, to the clients. And oftentimes I was the one sitting, in the office, strategizing, spotting the issues, putting the briefs together. And I knew the most about the files that were handed to me. And I would come up with the legal theories and the strategies. And they would often tell the clients, Sheila came up with this idea that I think is going to work. Or, she identified this smoking gun email. And so when I first started, and I don't know if it was because of my lack of experience or because I was a woman, I would not be able to tell you because I never asked. The clients would direct questions to, my male, bosses at the time. And it could have just been because they're more senior and more experienced. And that's how I always took it. But as the time evolved, and the trust that the men that I worked with displayed outwardly to the clients, that gave the clients the trust in me as well. So it turned to, we're not going to ask that guy. When we're with Sheila, we're going to call Sheila. We're going to email her. We're going to text her. We're going to do whatever we need to do to get the answer that we need. And we're going to go to Sheila for it. And so they really established that, that environment for me. And so I've been, very grateful for that. And it gave me the confidence to tell clients when I go on pitches or when I meet somebody that could be a potential client, I feel very confident saying to them, you want to get this resolved, you want somebody to advocate for you the best that they can, then I'm the right person for you. So I think having the male support, as Kristin said, is very important.
I totally agree. Thank you, Sheila. And to go back to something that Charlyn and Kristin mentioned, we all know that mentors are very important in our growth. They can help push us along and they can help guide you throughout your legal journey. How can we find role models or mentors in the legal profession? And what is the best advice you've ever received? I'll start with you, Charlyn.
So I'm looking at Kristin. I'm thinking about one of my first mentors was a part of Miami-Dade Fall. So, I'll start there. Like, there are a lot of supportive organizations out there. Dear mentor from Miami-Dade Fall, had a dear mentor from Cherry Bar Association. So really utilize and look at these bar associations. Also, I was at a Miami-Dade Fall event and I heard two lawyers talking about Junior League of Miami. And I'm like, what is this Junior League that they keep talking about? And it seems like it's a lot of female attorneys in it of all diverse backgrounds. I need to get involved. And here I am 10 years later, still a part of Junior League after getting in Junior League of Miami, which also has spurred off a lot of mentors. So the first step I say is look at your local bar associations and different organizations that are there specifically that support women and women lawyers at it.
I totally agree. Kristin, did you have anything that you wanted to add for that as well?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with everything Shar said. Having mentors is really helpful, and it can happen organically or it can happen through sometimes a program. I think in terms of the law, my first mentors were actually professors, I would say, especially, and I'll give a shout out to Dean Gomez, who is probably responsible for me getting my first job in international arbitration. It just so happens that the managing partner of a boutique firm where I worked before called Dean Gomez and said, hey, do you know anybody who has experience in arbitration and speaks Spanish and Portuguese? And he said, yeah, call Kristin. So that's how that happened. And so you never know what will happen. It's just great to keep an open mind, to be engaged at beginning in law school with the people. Find your interests and engage with those professors, those people who are involved. And it doesn't hurt. It absolutely helps to, beginning with law school or at the beginning of your career, find organizations that with members who you can relate to, or if you're interested in a certain area, then find that area. It could be part of a Florida bar section, or it could be a voluntary bar association, whatever it is. Certainly you'll find people to speak with and find people who will support you.
I can totally relate to that. And I think sometimes when you're involved in organizations and you meet people, they end up turning into your mentors. So I don't think people have to start off as a mentor. Sometimes you just meet people and genuinely click with them, and eventually they turn into your mentor and they want to help you succeed in life. Gia, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Gia?
Sure. For me, I mean, I got involved in law school, and I used to work at the law school too. So I had a lot of internal support from all the deans, professors who wanted to see me succeed. So that was really helpful. Seeing other women that had graduated ahead of me do well was also kind of an inspiration for me. And I had a few bosses who were really good mentors. And for me, getting involved with Fall was a huge, huge step in getting better mentorship. I was encouraged at a Fall event to contact the current president and say, hey, I want to be on a committee. And that's how it started. And then I met women, and I can think of one woman who really pushed me to do more. She's actually not an FIU alum, but she is very involved in Fall. Julie Rodriguez. She's now at Schutz with Kristin, and Julie encouraged me, hey, do it, go for it. And I, every time I had a big decision, and recently when I joined this firm, I called her and I said, Julie, what do you think about this? And we hadn't spoken in months, but it's always nice to go back to those people and get their feedback and get their 2 cents. In terms of what you can do, I mean, fall and other organizations in FIU have had like speed mentoring events. So as a law student, I would always try to go to that. And sometimes those relationships gel and pan out. Sometimes they don't. So if anybody has experienced the latter where they don't pan out, don't give up on that and don't feel like you're not going to be able to get a mentor just because that mentor in particular didn't work out. Some people are kind of put together. You're in a very constrained environment and you don't realize maybe that's not the right person, or maybe they get busy. So this is a very demanding profession. So sometimes you have to give a little bit of kindness in that aspect to actually give people the opportunity to get back to you, or maybe seek somebody else out. I also interned for a judge who was a great mentor too. So that was through FIU's externship program. So I highly encourage people to take advantage of that program because it does form connections. That's how I found my first job, and then kind of all trickled down after that. And every connection that I've had after that has had some sort of relationship to the last one. So it's really just about meeting people that are like-minded and kind of getting their advice and letting them know that you value that advice. And that to me has built these mentorship relationships.
I agree, Gia. And mentor, you can have more than one mentor. You don't have to invest in just one person. And I think sometimes people get stuck on having one mentor instead of having multiple relationships with people who have, are in an area where you'd like to be in the future. Okay, so let's move on. We talked about mentors. We talked about being involved in organizations. So that brings me to balance, which of course is a popular topic, especially among millennials. So how can women manage priorities while establishing boundaries to maintain their physical and mental well-being? And does work-life balance really exist? And if it does, do you have any tips for our audience? I'm going to start with you, Sheila, on this one.
So I think if you ask, a number of women this question, they would all answer it very differently. I often, one of my law partners is one of my closest friends, and we're often posed this question, and I always say, no, I don't think work-life balance exists. And she gets very upset at that answer. But, we're litigators, and with that comes a lot of stress, and it's a demanding career. So I can only speak from, my experience in this particular specialty. We are constantly putting out fires. And so it's the nature of the practice. It has nothing to do with anything else other than that. So it's hard to have a work-life balance when you're in this particular, specialty. With that said, I think I do my best to maintain one. And the way I've been able to kind of work my way towards a work-life balance has been kind of creating my own village. And that village is both internally at my office and also externally, with my family, my friends, even neighbors, anybody that's willing to pitch in to help, whether it's with, picking up my kids or dropping them off, or, helping me, meeting somebody like a worker at my house if I need to get something done, so that, I can, have some semblance of sanity in this profession, then I welcome it. You need that help. So I would say, again, it all goes back to who do you surround yourself with? Choose wisely. Because if you have a partner that's, expecting you to be home at a certain time every night, or even, and you can't choose your parents, you can't choose your siblings, you can't sometimes, you can't choose your kids either. But, if you've got those demands on you, it could be very stressful. So I would say, get as much help as you can to achieve that work-life balance. Take the time, every once in a while, go out with friends, do something fun for yourself, go get a massage, whatever it is, because it really does help your productivity. People think it's, going to take time away from work, but it ends up making you so much more productive and efficient So, I think there can be a work-life balance. It's just, I haven't found it yet, but I'm always working towards it myself.
I think it's an ongoing journey for all of us, Sheila. Gia, do you want to go next?
Sure. So for me, I think it does exist. I think it really is derived from boundary setting, and boundary setting not only with family, with friends, and my parents and sister are watching, so hi. sorry to say this, but you have to set boundaries. Sometimes I have a deadline and I am dying to go see my parents or dying to go to hang out with my sister or my friends, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to finish this and I'm going to give myself this amount of time, and then I'm going to take a little break, go do this, and then I sometimes have to get back to it. So it's really just the boundary setting, the kind of, I see certain things as a reward for getting things done. I try to reward myself for getting work done. So that's worked for me in the past. And sometimes I'll have a really stressful day and I'll go to the chiropractor in the middle of the day and get back cracks, or I'll go to acupuncture in the middle of the day on my lunch break and try to work that in. Or if I can squeeze in a workout, which has not been great lately, but it's really just about setting aside that time for yourself. And somebody told me try to take 30 minutes of self-care a day, and it seems like so little time, and sometimes such a long time when you're really busy, but it's really important if you can take 10 minutes even to just be with yourself, or meditate, or do yoga, or watch a TV show that you like, just to disconnect. I think that is crucial. Otherwise, in this profession, you just lose your mind with the amount of stress that we have on a day-to-day basis. You have to keep that normalcy. And Professor Baker was actually someone that I hear in my head all the time. You have to stay human. He gives this sermon at the end of every semester, and he says, you have to stay human. So to me, I hear him in my head since the day I graduated and started practicing. And if you don't stay human, there's just no way that you can move forward in this profession.
We definitely have to stay human. I think it's all about finding the things that help you maintain your well-being and whatever makes you happy on your spare time. So Charlyn, we're going to go with you next.
So I was actually speaking with one of my best friends last week, and she said, Char, we can't get no work-life balance, the work-life blend. And I know, before Sheila and Kristin, Gia and I were talking about like, how do you create that blend? That blend's going to be different at different stages of your career. So when I first moved to DC and worked on Capitol Hill, I'm in an environment where I'm on 24/7. My cell phone I had 2 cell phones, 2 sets of emails almost. At one point, as a chief for the congresswoman, I told her that I might as well date her because I feel like she is my partner, because she would, that's just the environment that I signed up for. But now that I've kind of gotten this third stage of my career, I'm able to have more of a blend. So I am able to leave work a little bit earlier to go get a massage, or leave work to go home and watch Working Moms on Netflix because it's one of my favorite shows. Plus, like Sheila and Gia said, and Chris mentioned this before, it's your village. So I have a village where when the pandemic hit, I went down to Florida and I worked for a whole month just so I see my mom face to face, because that's time I never got with her before, when I would work the entire year and only see my mom on a holiday or 2 holidays. So I think having that blend, it goes within different stages of your career, but just be prepared for it and just be open to it, and make sure that you're doing what you need to be your best self and to take care of yourself.
Well said. And I think it's about paying your dues as well. We will all have different times where you'll be work heavy or life heavy, but you have to know when that time is. Kristin, did you want to add anything?
Sure. And Jasmin, to that, I think that something to remember, at least from a litigation standpoint, and I think in all types of work, you could be a corporate lawyer, whatever, the work can ebb and flow. So when when you have to be on and it's a lot, you know, that it may be more demanding at times. The times it's not as demanding, maybe you can relax a little and give yourself a little more time for yourself. But it's not always going to be there, and it's impossible to predict what every day will bring, especially in us, you know, in the dispute setting. We could have, or any, I guess, again, private practice or any setting, you could have emergencies and have to be flexible and adapt to those. I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't give myself enough time for myself at the beginning of when I was a lawyer. Starting out, I felt guilty. I felt guilty about doing things. Like I should be thinking about work, I should be, and that kind of transcended, it started during law school. But the thing is that time spent in an office or time spent in a library doesn't mean you're doing quality work. So that's another thing to consider. So, you know, it is important to find time for physical activity or whatever you can do to sort of get away from work for a moment so that you can come back feeling refreshed. And I know it's not always easy to find that time, especially when you feel you need to be present. Obviously, the pandemic changed things a little bit, and people were working remotely, maybe going back now. But I think that experience of remote work has also enhanced the flexibility aspect of work. So people may not be expected to be in an office all the time. You can maybe on days when you don't have to be there or don't have to stay until after 6 o'clock, let's say, you could go work out and then go home and finish your work. It's just all about finding the time, but you know, work can be demanding. So it's important to organize. And once you, if and when you have kids, that's another aspect and another thing that kind of turns up the work-life balance on its head, and all work is life and life is work. But I think that, yeah, it is important to find some time and know that you can take the time for yourself, but be present and be, you know, when you're working, be engaged.
I love that, Kristin, being present and engaged. So we've kind of talked about mentors, work-life balance, staying present, paying your dues. So now let's talk about how can women progress in the legal profession? Since there's no one-size-fits-all approach for success, what one piece of practical advice would you give our audience on starting their career? Gia, I'll start with you.
I would say be true to yourself, be authentic. Don't compromise your integrity. Don't compromise your beliefs. Carla posted in the chat a question that actually kind of leads me back to this, and we'll get to the Q&A and everybody can talk about it. But especially for big law firms, should we expect questions about whether we want a family that affect your work? I've always been very upfront about my wants and my needs with employers, for example, because if it doesn't work for me, it's not going to work for them. And if they have an issue with my wants and needs, then it's probably not going to be a good relationship with, for example, for me here with RMO, I right off the bat told them I want a family, I want to do this, I want to do that. And if everything kind of aligns, that's the right place for you. If it doesn't align, then it's probably not going to be the right place. And if it is the right place temporarily, maybe it's just not going to be the long-term place. So for me, it's really just about being authentic, being true to yourself, preparing, making sure that you're doing the work, you're paying your dues, you're not expecting to be compensated or to have all of these things without you giving what you're there to give. So really just bringing 110% and being prepared, making yourself indispensable. I think that's crucial to succeeding in this industry.
That's a very good point, Gia. Charlyn, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Love what Gia said. I would add that one thing that I think has kind of helped me is I every year try to set goals, but not just my professional goals, my personal goals also. And that's part of me kind of staying true to myself and not just solely focusing on my career, because my career is very important, don't get me wrong, but also my personal journey is the same of importance of my professional journey. So making sure that I have goals, and I actually put them in different quarters like we do for work, and just kind of have my checklist and put it on my wall at my house so that I'm in my head every day, like, hey, this is what you have to look forward to. Here's what you have to work towards.
I think personal and professional goals are key. So thank you for bringing that up, Charlyn. Do you have anything you want to add, Kristin?
Yeah, well, I love everything that you've both said. I don't think there's a one size fits all strategy for, progressing in the legal profession. It depends on what you're doing or what you want to do, but don't lose sight of your goals. Don't get discouraged if what you're doing right now isn't what you want to do. Keep that desire or whatever goal you have in mind, and keep working toward it, and find those people who can help you achieve, or you can network with the people that you want to network with. Don't feel intimidated by them. Don't be afraid. Also, when you're starting out, don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Just because you get an assignment you don't know, it's better to go to let's say the lawyer who's giving you an assignment and ask to speak about it than spend 5 hours and do the wrong thing. So I think it's just, and I'm going off into different tangents, but it's really, don't feel that imposter syndrome. It has held us all back. I certainly felt imposter syndrome even yesterday before we had our installation of officers and directors of Miami-Dade Law. And I thought, what am I doing here? How did I become the president of this organization? I don't belong here. And then I thought, you know what? I'm here for a reason, and I'm here now, so we're just going to do it. So just continue to follow your dreams, follow your goals. Don't get discouraged, and you'll see the results.
That's a great tip, Kristin. And I definitely think it's important to remember that everyone was once in your shoes. We don't all start at the top. We have to start from somewhere. Sheila, did you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everything that my co-panelists here said. I don't think there's a one size fits all answer as to how to progress in this profession. I would say that you spend the first 5 years really learning how to be a very good lawyer. Invest in yourself. That is the number one piece of advice I could give everybody. That means that don't just do what you're asked, understand what you're being asked to do, spend time self-educating. There are so many resources out there. Just pick up any article you can and learn about other areas of the law, because that's going to help you in whatever practice area that you've chosen. So spend that time investing in yourself. Be proactive. Don't expect somebody to hold your hand and teach you everything about the law. It's just not going to ever work that way. And once you've proved yourself and you've become indispensable to a partner or two, don't be afraid to go and ask them to invest in you as well. Having that conversation. Do you have my back? Whatever size firm that you're in, it's okay to have that conversation. I've given you as much as I can give you. And I just need to know that you're going to be here for me when it comes time for me to progress. When I'm up for counsel or for shareholder, are you going to support me? Are you going to go out on a limb and make sure that, I get the position that I want? And that's an okay conversation to have once you have become an indispensable member of the team. So, there's a number of ways to progress, but, communication and hard work is really one of the two things that I would point everybody to.
I agree with everything you said, and this has been an amazing conversation. And I am so thankful for you guys for being here with us today. And so before we close it out, I want to give you all a chance to say any closing remarks that you would like to leave with the audience that may help them tie into this conversation. And you guys can feel free to go whenever you like.
Well, I'll go just because I saw this question regarding interviews, especially for big law firms. Should we expect questions about whether we want a family and how that will affect our work and commitment to the firm? They shouldn't be asking you those questions. And if you want a family, you're more than entitled to a family. And especially a bigger law firm should already have a lot of policies in place that will enable you, that support you as a mother or a parent to a child. And so don't ever feel like the fact that you want a family is some type of something that will be looked at disfavorably. And if they're looking at it disfavorably, first of all, I think that's wrong and not legal. And second, you don't want to be there.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I assume that every candidate that I'm interviewing wants a family, male or female. And I'm also going to assume that they intend to be a very good parent as well. So, I would never ask that question. I think it's an inappropriate question to ask. And I think the assumption is that most people want to have families and most people want to be, good at having them. So it should have no bearing on whether or not you're going to be a productive member of the team. At least it doesn't for me.
And on the flip side of that, if you don't want a family, that doesn't mean that you have to dedicate yourself to work 120% of the time. So that again goes back to boundary setting. If you say, okay, after this time, I'm not picking up the phone unless we have an emergency, or after this time, I'm putting my phone away or on silent. And typically my phone goes on silent after like 10:30. And I check my email sometimes after that. And if something's pressing, I'll respond so I don't have to deal with it the next day. But don't be afraid to set those boundaries early and to say, you know what, unless this is absolutely necessary, I'm not going to work till 12 midnight. I'm not going to work till 1 a.m. And sometimes you do have to do that to pay your dues. And at the beginning of your career, you're probably going to be doing that more often than not, but it's really necessary to set those boundaries. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to go up to people and say, and as a student, sometimes you're afraid to say, hey, can I come shadow you? Or can I take you, can we go to coffee? And can I learn more about what you do? And that kind of thing really shows a lawyer that, or a practitioner, that you're out there and you want to learn more. You're hungry for experience, you're hungry for information, and you're a go-getter. So I would say go up to the alumni, email us. You have questions, find us on LinkedIn, friend us, and connect with us. We're more than happy to give you advice, and we're more than happy to help you out however we can. FIU is a very tight-knit family type community. So whenever I can uplift an FIU alum or refer an FIU alum, I try to do that.
And I love being on this panel, by the way, because I feel like like Gia just said, we are a family, and some of us just met. Just to tie that up, I would say, stay in touch. Don't think that this is a one-off relationship when you're meeting people. I still will send Dean Mason a message on Facebook sometimes. Judge Cote and Professor Roman helped, were volunteers for mine and voter protection. With Fall, I still have dear mentors in Fall that I talk to this day. Don't think that it's a one-off connection, because your legal journey is so much in store for you. And these are people that are going to be with you, some for a lifetime. So, utilize us, utilize everyone in your network, but just know it is family and just keep in touch.
Thank you, Charlyn. It's very important for us to remember that we are a family. And I think that we should also it's okay to hit the reset button. You know, your legal journey is going to be full of ups and downs. There will be good times, there will be bad times. And I think it's really important to remember to invest in yourself and to know what you want, go after it, and not be afraid to make those relationships that will help you get there. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name again is Jasmin Grant. I hope to have a part 2 of this soon, and I hope that next time we'll be able to see everyone in person. Thank you for joining us, and remember to follow our Instagram page, our FIU Facebook page. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.